Man, we got breaking NFL news coming out now. I was 1 foot out the door. I turned around and immediately I stormed back, right? The Dallas Cowboys are moving on from Mike McCarthy, right? Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network is reporting Mike McCarthy is out as Cowboys head coach. The two sides couldn't agree on the length of the contract, and McCarthy will pursue other opportunities. He leaves Dallas with a winning record and 3 playoff appearances. Now, this directly impacts the New York Jets, right? It's almost a two-pronged effect, right? The first is Mike McCarthy, according to Adam Schefter, has been linked to the Chicago Bears and to the New Orleans Saints. And McCarthy obviously has ties with that Saints organization. And so that obviously would make sense, right? If the Saints want to switch it up, if they want to go from defense, Dennis Allen, to an offensive-minded Mike McCarthy, if they want to bring in, a veteran coach that's been around the game for such a long time in McCarthy, as opposed to a first-year guy in Aaron Glenn. If Loomis wants to shift gears like that, McCarthy seems to be the logical fit, especially if McCarthy wants a longer deal, right? Because we all know the New Orleans Saints job, it's not going to be this quick one-year fix, right? They have some cap situations to figure out. They have some roster holes that they have to figure out. There are some question marks with the New Orleans Saints. As far as the Chicago Bears are concerned, none of the real coaching candidates are crossing over between the Jets and the Bears. So I really don't think that aspect is really relevant to talk about. But I do feel like with the Saints, right, if the Saints want to go with a Mike McCarthy here, whatever, in the next couple of weeks, because, keep in mind, the Saints don't have to search for a general manager. Mickey Loomis is still in charge. So if Loomis wants to go out and hire a McCarthy again in this, 1.5, 2 weeks from now, Aaron Glenn is out there, right? And that's been the favorite for Glenn this entire time. It's really feeling like the Saints are prioritizing Aaron Glenn and Joe Brady. Like that's just the sense that I get. That's the vibe. Right, you look at Loomis's comments. You look at how the Saints are kind of operating throughout this process. Which candidates are the ones that the Saints targeting? Right. Again, it really feels as though, and based off of reports as well, it really feels as though Glenn is the front runner in both New Orleans and New York. So obviously, right, if the Saints go after McCarthy and get that deal done, and this is under the assumption that the Saints want him, they have interest, and he interviews well, then obviously Aaron Glenn is out there, assuming Glenn doesn't go to a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Las Vegas Raiders. But I feel like at that point in time, it would be a pretty safe thing to say that Glenn would wind up with the Jets. It just makes so much sense. Now, here's the other twist, right? If the Jets can sit here and interview Jeff Ulbrich to become the team's permanent head coach, if they can interview Mike Locksley, Ron Rivera, Darren Reese to become the team's head coach, then they need to sit down with Mike McCarthy as well. They need to give him an interview. Mike McCarthy, I understand it. He does not have a good reputation. It doesn't really feel as though the national sports media likes him all that much. I feel like when you mention that name, Mike McCarthy, the positives go out the window. And it's just the negatives that are talked about, right? Playoff disappointments, things of that nature, maybe not maximizing the strengths on the offensive side of the football, maybe an offensive system that is a little behind the times, if you will. So with that said, we take a look at who Mike McCarthy is. This is someone who has 18 years as a head coach, 12 playoff trips in those 18 years with 1 Super Bowl championship. He's 287 to 174. That is a fantastic win-loss record when it's all said and done, right? If Mike McCarthy were to call it quits today and just retire from football, having that win-loss record look like that is extremely, extremely impressive. We also take into consideration where Mike McCarthy has been coaching throughout the course of his 18 years. The Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys, 2 of the biggest brands in the sport. In the case of the Dallas Cowboys, he's working with so much pressure on him, so tons of responsibilities. He's working hand in hand with one of the loudest owners in the sport, in Jerry Jones. So in other words, I think having, of course, this head coaching experience, but specifically in Green Bay, in Dallas, where there's eyes on you, there's responsibilities, there's so much pressure year in and year out to win football games, get to the playoffs. All of these expectations, dealing with Jerry Jones as an owner, the New York Jets are not going to be too big of a job for him, right? We hear it all the time. Oh, the Jets will scare away supposed candidates. Woody Johnson is going to be too much of a factor. Not for Mike McCarthy. No, he's an adult. And one thing that I feel really, really good that Mike McCarthy can come in and handle is operating and establishing a program. Just coming in and saying, hey, this is how we do things professionally here. Over the last handful of seasons here, it's just been a complete joke. It's been a circus. We have just the justification of losses almost on a weekly basis. And it could be the simplest thing ever, like we played a good football team, or the weather played a role, right? Mike McCarthy, I feel as though from a professional standpoint, from a commitment to the game standpoint, from a detail standpoint, he is really, really good. He's, despite how we feel about him as the Jets' potential option, or, you know, the lack of playoff success, he can come in and establish a program. He's not going to be rattled. I'm talking about practicing the right way, game planning the right way, understanding your opponent, understanding who you are, figuring out your strengths and your weaknesses. I think really McCarthy checks a lot of boxes. Here are my downsides, though, with Mike. Of course, you know, again, the playoff disappointments. I'm not really too concerned with that at this point in time, because that, you know, obviously you can take that in a million different directions and run with it. But what I am concerned with, play calling duties, right? Yes, McCarthy has been around the game for a long, long time. Yes, I do like his ability to build a staff. He's worked with some really, really good coaches over the years. Obviously, we're seeing what Dan Quinn's doing in Washington. You know, Dallas, of course, scooped him up as DC. Kellen Moore's doing a really good job this season. In any case, I think Mike McCarthy's best role, specifically with the Jets, would be that CEO managerial style of coach, where he can hire qualified, innovative candidates on both the offensive and defensive side of the football, step in and say, hey, this is how we're going to attack this team. This is the standard. These are the responsibilities that we have on our plate. These are the details that we are going to pay attention to, and we need to go out and execute. I honestly, I think in that style of role, McCarthy would make a ton of sense. Where I don't like Mike McCarthy is if they bring him in and he tries to do everything himself, right? He's calling plays. He's not building a great staff. He's not delegating, you know, again, responsibilities here. And it's just, you kind of feel like it would just be a repeat of this season in Dallas. Of course, they've experienced a bunch of injuries, so it's not really like the true Dallas team. But, you know, I would fear a little bit of an archaic offense or offensive style. If I'm being 100% honest, I do think having that innovation, having maybe that youth at OC and DC, if Mike McCarthy is in charge, trying to push the boundaries of being creative, that is one of McCarthy's biggest knocks, is that he's not creative enough. But again, if Darren Reese can sit down and seriously interview with the New York Jets for their head coaching job, if Mike Loxley can do the same thing, Jeff Ulbrich, Mike McCarthy needs to be at the very least interviewed. I mean, we're talking Ron Rivera. We're you know, Rex got an interview. It seems like the Jets are interviewing Arthur Smith. Anyone under the sun is interviewing for this Jets job. If Mike McCarthy's out there, I don't want to hear that the Jets have zero interest. Why? The only thing that I could accept from that standpoint, right, if those two parties don't meet, is if McCarthy says, nope, I'm not going to you guys, right? And there's been a lot of disappointed and angry fans because there hasn't been links to Ben Johnson. There's no interview set up with a Todd Monken, a Cliff Kingsbury, a Liam Cohen. It's like, hey, these are some of the best offensive minds that are being talked about. Why aren't the Jets interviewing them? Again, we're interviewing Reese, and no disrespect to him, but just, you know, level of head coaching candidate. Why aren't we talking to Cliff? Why aren't we talking to Cohen? Why aren't we talking to Monken? There's a very, very, very high chance that those candidates just said, no, we're not interested. So instead of making it public, right, Jets request to interview so-and-so, and then you have to have that candidate come out and say, no, thanks, we're declining. Similar to Aaron Glenn in New England. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section on this. I think Mike McCarthy's a really interesting option. I know he's not a popular option. I know not many people would want Mike McCarthy. I think a lot of people would criticize this move, but I think he's kind of like the anti-Saleh to a certain degree, the anti-Gase. By that, I mean, he steps in and he's an adult. He's not worried about like national media headlines. right? What's being written about him in the paper. Like he can handle the media, he can handle a loud owner, he can handle expectations. He's done this before. I think this would be considered a very like high floor type of signing for the New York Jets. But up to this point, there has been no interest from the Jets. According to Schefter, it just looks like the Saints, it looks like the Bears are the potential other opportunities. And by the way, quick side note, Chicago, man, they're casting a really wide net. I mean, there's talks about Flores, there's talks about Cliff, there's talks about Ben Johnson and Pete Carroll, now McCarthy. Vrabel obviously interviewed for Chicago. So they're casting a pretty wide net as well. Anyway, let me know your thoughts, and as always, go Jets.